I want to be really clear with my view and with also the abolitionist view. I can't speak for everybody and all abolitionists, and I want to be sensitive to that. And if you speak to any abolitionist, they'll give you a different point of view, and it's not totally
because they're fucking anarchists.
But they're not anarchists. They some of them are, but we're not looking to reform. We're not looking to reform. We're looking to abolish the prison, the institution of the prison, and more than that, we're looking to abolish get rid of the conditions that have created a society where it exists and like where people's needs are met. Like it's a very encompassing view. And it's also a horizon. Like nobody who's an abolitionist think it's going to happen tomorrow. And they're not naive. You know what I mean? They're really not. They're doing great work, and they have a lot of hope, and they're great people. I love them. They're great people. And sorry, I did it like that. I'm so sorry for doing that. But
what? What did you?
That was my Donald Trump.
That was your Donald Trump?
That was shitty.
Dude, that was so bad. You're going to fucking jail for cringe, dog. How about that? I am not in favor of abolishing prisons for that and that only. Okay. Let's talk about that. So
okay.
We were going to inevitably broach a subject. I am a spokesperson for the most part, right?
Prisons.
Yes, exactly. I have been hired by the private prison.
Hasan Piker facility.
Yes, the prison industrial complex has hired me. No, I'm a spokesperson in the sense that like when I'm doing advocacy, I try to direct my commentary to the audience that I assume is listening. Okay. Right?
Okay.
And in most circumstances, I feel like the audience that's listening are normies, right? They're not like very well read. They're, just getting started. Maybe they like Bernie Sanders or something. My audience at this point on a Sunday morning is going to be a little bit more the core audience. So obviously this is like a more well-read a part of the audience. But in general, I like to cut my commentary for like the average person who hasn't thought about these ideas thoroughly. And that's why I always say that, like, functionally speaking, I am on board with a lot of what the abolitionists advocate for, but I will not admit that readily when I'm doing commentary on a particular subject, because I feel like that makes me a more effective communicator. And what I mean by that is, I completely understand, as far as all I've read, I completely understand the theory behind abolition. I can even steelman it for you if you would like. At prison abolition. We can talk about police abolition as well, separately from that. But I still don't agree with it as far as, in the interim period or the short-term period, or maybe even in the perfect society as well.
Okay.
But that does not mean that I believe that, we should be incarcerating in the way that we are currently in the United States of America. Like, I'm not one of those people who's like, well, about the Boston bomber. Like,
I don't, yeah. And like, I don't expect people to be on board with it the second they hear about it, especially like, it's more about learning about it and thinking about it, and the fact that we take these systems for granted, the way the police work, the way the prison industrial complex works. So it's not saying, hey, we're going to do this tomorrow, and that's not what abolitionists think, and that's not what they're asking for. And I do think, talking about reform, there are reforms that are useful and reforms that are not as useful, Ruth Wilson Gilmore calls it the non-reformist reform. It's like things that take power away from these institutions, like take funding away and putting it into social programs, or having civilian review boards for police departments, which is also sort of debated, or, closing down prison complexes, bail reform that gets more people out of jail, like stuff like that. That's helpful, but not necessarily taking it apart brick by brick.
Yeah.
And like, but I think it's all these people, all the normies, and the people you're talking to, can be on board for saying, hey, this thing is inflated and we need to get away from it. And that's not incongruent with like abolitionists. Like, because we're getting there, right?
No. That's 100%.
Yeah.
But you're a full-blown abolitionist.
Hell yeah.
You don't believe that prisons should exist.
That's right,
They are obsolete. That's what you're saying.
That's
our prisons. Are prisons obsolete? What is he doing? He's going into his bag. Oh, what does he have in there? Wait a minute. What?
Look at this.
Oh my God. It's Angela Davis.
It's for you. I brought this.
That's crazy. Angela Davis, Our Prison's Obsolete. Early fans of the show that have been watching for a long time know that I quote a lot of this book specifically, but thank you for this gift.
Yeah.
I will not be reading it. I hate reading. I've never read. I don't know how to read.
Okay. Yeah, no,
actually.
I figured. Well, I can do it in pictures for you.
Okay.
I'll do it later.
Damn, I pulled up immediately. F-type prisons in Turkey were inspired by the recent emergence of the super maximum security or supermax prison in the United States, which presumes to control otherwise unmanageable prisoners by holding them in permanent solitary confinement and by subjecting them to varying degrees of sensory deprivation. In its 2002 World Report, Human Rights Watch paid particular attention to the concerns raised by the spread of ultra-modern super-maximum security prisons. Turkish prison system is actually very interesting. They have it is ironic that was it the Murder on the Orient Express or whatever? It was a fucking Agatha Christie novel,
yes,
I think, made it seem like Turkish prisons are really fucking terrifying. They're significantly better than American prisons, but most prisons are better than American prisons.
Wait, can I show all the books that I brought?
Sure, go ahead.
For you?
Yeah.
So I brought a couple books for Hasan.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorites. It's Mariam Kaba. We do this till we free us. I really think you should read this. I think it's her essays and it's super digestible, and it's really great. Mm-hmm. She's the best. I brought you that one.
I don't know how to read.
I know. Well, it's for your audience.
I told him I don't know how to read, and he's like, no, I'm going to bring books anyway.
I know. I'm forcing you guys to read. I'm so sorry. I'm so boring. This is No More Police, also by Mariam Kaba and Andrea Ritchie. This is more about police abolition. Really fucking great. This is my friend Erica Purnell, Becoming Abolitionists. Great book. And then another one, but I'll show you that one later. It's not an abolitionist book.
Okay. But
I'm forcing you to read these at gunpoint.
No,
give me the strap.
No, wait, really? You're going to hold it?
No, I'm not going to hold it.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about abolition. Okay. You want to abolish prisons.
Yes.
Why?
Do you think that we should have abolished slavery? Don't.
No, yes, I do. I do.
Okay. So the foundation of the prison in the United States is based in slavery and anti-blackness and built in white supremacy. And those are the direct roots of it as we know it. And certainly for the last 60 years since drug war with Nixon, but even before that, where the prison population in the United States has exploded. But even before that, it was once slavery ended, prisons became the alternative to it. Mm-hmm. So when I think that's
okay, what's next? Okay. You're going to tell me Louisiana State Penitentiary is basically a plantation? Okay.
Yeah.
What? Oh, come on. Come on now.
I think that's a really important thing to think about is there was a time where people said, let's abolish slavery. And people said, come on, this is part of what we do and we've got it going on and it's not so bad. And even Angela Davis in her book talked about how actually at the beginning of the prison system, it was almost worse than the plantation system because, and this is to say they're both horrible, right? But in her words, they had a buy-in when they owned slaves because it was their property. And then when the prison system came in, nobody technically owned the people anymore. So they could just use them freely and didn't care what happened to them. So it was even more brutal than the plantation system.
And now we have convict leasing.
Yeah.
Which is the same shit.
In California, people get paid,
firefighters?
A couple cents an hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's it is modern day slavery.
By the way, I don't disagree with any of that stuff.
Okay.
I completely recognize it. I talk about that all the time. This is not really a debate on that front. I agree with that. I guess my own perspective. If we're to like find an area of disagreement, if we were to look for an area of disagreement, I think the only disagreement is, and this does not justify the current carceral state as it stands. I just want to qualify that immediately. But the only thing I would say is that there is a necessity for some form of institutionalization that is for rehabilitation overall, that is managed by medical professionals. But like there needs to be I feel like it's I don't know, I don't want to use the term containment, but I feel like if you've done something really fucked up, obviously, for the most severe cases, like there needs to be, I still believe that there needs to be like some democratically organized, completely civilian controlled group of individuals that go, okay, we have to look at this. We have to, we have to analyze this. We have to ensure that like, this person is like properly rehabilitated and can reintegrate into society, and maybe for a duration, not out and about to continue doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So that's my belief, that there is like there are edge cases always that does not, again, justify the current existing structure at all. So functionally, I am on board with everything that the abolitionists are fighting for at this stage. But as far as antisocial personality disorder related crimes, or things that like our current level of medicine cannot account for with respect to rehabilitation, there needs to be like a holding.
I think we're talking about a couple things. I want to sort of like recognize my own limitations in terms of talking about some of these things, especially when it comes to people who are struggling with like mental illness and other things. And I think like I'm careful, I'm cautious about that. Also just because I feel like we all accidentally, even like when we have good intentions, are like especially with Jordan Neely and everything that happened with Jordan Neely, like sort of deputizing ourselves to say what was going on with the person, what their situation was. But I think, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit. Like, I understand people's concerns and like kind of what you're talking about, but I really think it's important to recognize that we're talking about a world that we're not sure exactly what it actually looks like, because we haven't really lived it yet. And we have a set of,
I agree.
And so it's like, but I don't believe at all that it's utopian. I think that it's moving towards that world again. And I hear what you're saying about like democratic alternatives and stuff like that. It is a centering, in terms of harm, we want to center people who are harmed, victims, which our current system doesn't do. And we want to create practices to center those people, and then ask a question, which is, this is transformative justice, which is, how do we prevent this from happening again with this person, and what were the circumstances that led for this to happen, right? And what you're talking about kind of is, I'm very weary of the idea of like social death, you know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of what the prison is like. And even if you talk to people who have mental health crises and get into one of these facilities, those can be just as bad as prisons. They can be brutal.
Oh, it can be worse than prisons.
Oh yeah, it can be a horrible, horrible place.
Yeah.
So
it wouldn't work in the way that it does. Even like what I'm talking about right now, it's not like prison. And there's no solitary confinement. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think that I also don't like ceding any ground, because I think it still lets this system exist. Like, even the idea of just like when we just talk about, well, that's a little bit unreasonable, that seems a little bit too out there, so we just need these reforms. The reforms become institutionalized. Like, they just become part of the business as usual. That's always been very true of the police. And if you look at the history of policing in the United States, it's like the last 100 years. Every time something happens, they have a commission.
Yeah.
They investigate. They say, we need new technology. And they've been doing it for they did it in the 1930s. They did it in the 1960s, the Kerner Commission. So
the overdrive came like with, I guess, special weapons and tactics, especially, right? Or surplus programs and
it's just
militarization.
More money.
Militarization
of
the
police.
Money gets poured. All the time, they're constantly saying like, oh, we need to fucking train them better. We need to train them better.
Right.
And that's why I find myself obviously like functionally on your side of this conversation. It's just that when I'm communicating it, I think when I'm communicating to a broader audience, everyone is always going to say, what do you do with the pedophiles?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What do you do with the pedophiles? And the reality is, or what do you do with serial killers? This is 1% of the fucking prison population, and obviously is not like justifiable for the current carceral state that we exist under, because 99% of the prisoners, their crimes are born out of their material conditions. Actually, 100% of the prisoners, their crimes are born out of material conditions, but which are solvable. But there's always going to be edge cases. There's always going to be edge cases which people will like, hit you in the head over.
Yeah. I mean, there are some, I mean, yes, we're talking about it's a small percentage, but obviously people think about them and when they think about particularly bad crimes that they don't like. And I think part of the question that we need to ask in that situation is, what do we do? What do we do today? Like, what do we do about those things today? And like, we don't do that much about those things today. The police, they actually get an arrest and they go through a prosecution process on like less than 10% of the things that they investigate and that get reported. And then in terms of, when we're talking about really nasty stuff, very, very low conviction rates, things that even go to trial, people that actually go through the system and the process. So yeah, we're talking about this infinitesimally small portion of the overarching population, but it comes up again and again and again. And I think you actually kind of put it very well, which is it can't justify the entire system as it is. Abolitionists,
and I don't believe that.
Abolitionists don't like this is important too. Abolitionists don't believe that like violence will like cease to exist in the world. You know what I mean?
So how do you deal with it?
I think community-based alternatives. I mean, like, I think restorative justice practices, which were originally created in indigenous communities, which brought together the person who did the harm and the person who was harmed, and sort of like actually had the community aspect. And for smaller things, like,
so we're getting the community to pelt the pedophile. Is that what we're doing?
I mean, when it comes to that stuff, I mean, like, okay, Larry Nassar, the guy who was, and also this is a trigger warning for people because of what the subject matter of this is. Larry Nassar, did all this, sexually assaulted all of these girls on the USA gymnastics team. This was back a couple years ago. And he was sentenced to a zillion years in jail, like 140 whatever years in jail. Larry Nassar going to prison, there's a problem, because if we like it when the system worked today. Do you know what I mean? We like that. It makes us feel good. But the truth is, like, it didn't actually work, because Larry Nassar was able to abuse people for years and years and years and get away with it. And what about the institutions that allowed him to do that, and the people who turned a blind eye to him doing that? So we need to, not as like a normie who's just learning about abolition, because it takes a little while, but as abolitionists, we need to like recognize that the systems don't justify, these microscopic wins don't justify the system. And it's still a system that will replicate itself again and again.
No, I mean, I agree with all that.
Yeah.
I do. I agree with all that. But the reason why I guess qualify, or the reason why I clarify that, like, I still need like, or I still believe that not that this justifies the current system, and not that this justifies prisons as we understand it currently, but I believe that there's a need for like a level of containment for a brief duration, even if, and it's not, and the reason for that is not like punishment. I'm not even talking about like containment for punishment. It's more so containment for, let's say, a medical diagnosis, which can be very complicated. This is like I said, antisocial personality disorder related crimes are, as it stands, and maybe perhaps forever, impossible to diagnose accurately, and impossible to correctly understand and stop. Like the system that we have is like what the psychopath's manual. It's fucking bullshit. It's outdated. It's antiquated. It sucks. The UK, as far as I understand it, has like basically a permanent asylum, like permanent institutionalization protocol set in place. Once you're like, once you are identified as like a psychopathic criminal, which is insane to think about. But there's certainly no current way of adequately dealing with it. And I don't even know if there ever will be, but there is a need for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I still disagree. I think I understand what you're getting at. I think the reality is, and even based on the conversation we're having right now, I mean, I don't have all the answers, right? Obviously, but it's also not on each individual person. It's us as like a collective in solving this problem. And I think that should be the focus when we talk about it, because a lot of the time gets kind of derailed in terms of this conversation of, yeah, well, serial killers. Yeah, the guy's doing this, the guy's doing that. And again,
which is why I usually don't have this conversation, for the record.
Yeah.
Because I think it's unproductive, because I don't agree with it. Like, I don't agree with the other side. Like, I'm not trying to justify prisons and it existing by bringing up edge cases. You know what I mean? Because it's irrelevant in the grand scheme of things because of how much work that needs to be done to even work within the system that we have currently to try and make marginal improvement.
Yeah,
improvements as best as we can.
But also, like, what does a society look like where people have their basic needs met and the resources that they need? Like, we do have kind of a vision of what an abolitionist world looks like in wealthy neighborhoods.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So like, that's, the cops aren't walking around the wealthy neighborhoods. You have to like call them if you needed them to come there. They're not policing or criminalizing those populations.
Absolutely.
So
agreed.
I think like we need to think about things in that way. And I think, as people who are kind of, maybe we don't all totally agree and you have your reservations about it and everything, we're all on this like train together and we're heading towards this destination. And I think we can get there. I think we can be productive together in getting there. But
yeah,
there's these like spooky, scary cases, but like, it's something that we can't know fully and nobody has the perfect answer to, because we don't exist in that world. We live in one where it's the world that we know, where we spend $100 billion+ a year on policing, where we have, a prison industrial complex that's billions of dollars, where there, that's the world we exist in, where every day the New York Post is like, this guy came out of jail and
ultimately
cut this guy's head off.
Ultimately, that's precisely the reason why I never have this conversation, because like it's ridiculous to like dunk on abolition as a concept, even though I do like making fun of anarchists and saying they're smelly, or even abolitionists and calling them anarchists, like Cinemarxism in the chat, who's like fucking very upset at me. He's great.
I think
great
anarchists
cameraman, director.
Are sometimes upset because they think that we're going to like reproduce a system, like the same system, and I don't believe that that's the case. But I understand the concern.
Well, but no, okay, my point was the reason why I usually don't debate abolition.
Well, we're not debating it. We're talking about
even
it.
Talk about abolition all too much is because
homies.
It's so. Yeah, of course, it's so far it's so far out in the future. Like, it's so beyond the pale that like I don't care if someone calls me an abolitionist. Other than optically speaking, I think that it's better to not say that if I'm in a conversation, because everyone is going to straw man and gotcha once they say like, oh, you're an abolitionist. Like they're going to be like, what are you going to do about the rapists? Like, I could, if I wanted to, and you've probably had this conversation many times, like trap you in numerous different like rhetorical traps that make it optically impossible to speak on the matter and effectively communicate your side without just basically saying we have to do community, or we have to do like community-based solutions to like violent pedophiles and shit like that. and it's not a justification for the current carceral state or any prison system in general. So it's like, I get it. I understand it, which is why I don't talk about it usually.
Yeah. And I mean, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't like, okay, if there's not a carceral system, I mean, I don't like saying it, you know what I mean? Like, and someone has done some, you know, what happens if somebody kills somebody else, right? What's the resolution to that?
Yeah.
I mean, there's different resolutions. There's like reparations. There's, you know, having someone pay, you know, doing stuff for the family, admitting wrong, XYZ. But also, you can't in an abolitionist society, hypothetically, you couldn't stop like somebody from going and doing something to that person.
Fucked up. Yeah.
So like, I don't know, you know what I mean? But I don't think that's the answer. Like, I don't like a violence alternative. I think it's more about just recognizing how it is. Also, Olay has a really good video on this that she just put out that might be worth.
If Marxists say that the state will wither away in communism, then surely the carceral state will too. Yes. I mean, that's ultimately the reason why whenever people are like, oh, you're a communist, I'm like, I don't really give a shit if you call me that. I don't care. I don't care whatever you call me. Ultimately, it doesn't change my perspective at all.